Joining me now here at the Reagan National Economic Forum in Simi Valley is South Dakota Senator Mike Round. Senator, it's great to have you this morning.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity.
What is it going to take to get this done?
51 votes in the House, 218 in the, or 51 in the Senate and 218 in the House, and that's what it's going to take. And
you don't have the votes
Venn
now.
diagram is what it is.
You don't have the votes now.
No. And in fact, look, there are some parts of the bill that I would totally disagree with, and yet at the same time, we all know that the most critical part of this whole program is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act extension, permanent basis, if at all possible. And then second of all, a few amendments to it, and then a debt ceiling extension. Now, the cost savings and so forth, we're going to work at it, get as much as we can, but that's really going to be the deciding factor on how many votes we have, in my opinion.
How many people are actually looking at the growth that could come out of this, come out of the president's agenda as a partial way to pay for some of this?
That is exactly what we're looking at in the Senate. We believe we have evidence of it based on the 2017 experience. Between 2017 and 2020, we had growth. We had economic growth. We need to do that again. And if we go to a permanent basis with this, number one, you don't have a tax increase on the American public of $2,400 per household. But second of all, you actually show economic growth because of the stability in the Tax Growth and Jobs Act being made permanent.
I think, Ron Johnson was with us the other day here, and he said, look, let's debate the no tax on tips and no tax on Social Security later. Let's do that in a separate bill later in the year. But there's no guarantee that gets done if you wait on that.
We have the opportunity. We could actually do 3 separate bills if we needed to. But Ron is right. Let's get what we can on this first one. And this is one of the concerns that we've had in the past. And so I would love to see what Ron has suggested at least being considered and move from there. But number one, Tax Cuts Jobs Act made permanent. Second of all, get that debt ceiling increase up to where it needs to be. And then let's talk about all of the savings that we can do. So look, I think Ron has really got a good idea there.
Now, hold on. 3 bills will never fly in the House. You know that.
Maybe, maybe not, but 2 might. And look, let's get as much done in the first one as we possibly can.
I want to read you something here because I want to get your take on what some of your colleagues are saying, because they are saying that this is a generational opportunity to actually cut into the $37 trillion in debt. Ron Johnson says that the CBO current projection is probably, and this is a rosy scenario, $22 trillion 10-year deficit. That's $2.2 trillion a year. Total debt going from $37 trillion today to almost $60 trillion by 2035. Yeah, but that's a hard nut to crack.
It is if you believe it, but you're not talking about dynamic scoring here. You're talking about not including any actual economic growth with this.
Okay.
And we know from the 2017 timeframe until 2020, we have economic growth that goes along with these Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I mean, there really is something with regard to the curve that Ronald Reagan made famous in terms of you've got to have the right tax rate in order to get the most economic benefit and raise the most revenue. That's what we're after in this particular. The Laffer curve, I think, actually works.
I love that.
And so.
And that's what President Trump believes as well, by the way.
Absolutely. Look, I think the president, when we did this the first time around, the president could see it, and we're trying to do it again, make it permanent. But if we don't do it, and here's the important part for a whole lot of families out there, if we don't pass this bill and that particular part of the bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, average American families, South Dakota families, are going to see between $1,400 on their personal income taxes, but a total of about $2,400 total in additional taxes per year. That's if we do nothing. So we have to do this. We've got to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act put in and made permanent. And if we do that, we save that type of a tax increase. Now, on the other side of it, CBO will tell you, well, or other individuals will say, if you allow this to expire, you will reduce the debt. But the way you reduce the debt is by increasing it by $2,400 in taxes per family, and we're not going to do that.
I'm so glad you said it that way, because this is not about cutting taxes. This is about stopping the most significant tax increase that families have ever seen. All right, I want to move on to China. You are on a panel today on China. We talk about China, communist China, and its bad behavior toward America, undermining America at every turn. We talk about that all the time on this program. Give us the threat.
China right now really does not believe that patents and copyrights work because they don't really believe that you can own an idea.
They don't think they exist.
No. And so to them, it's okay to steal the patents. It's okay to simply ignore copyrights. We figure that right now, on an annual basis, they cost the American public about $600 billion a year in theft of intellectual properties.
But listen to what you just said. You're talking about one of the United States' most important trading partners.
Third largest.
Third largest trading partner is stealing $600 billion from us every year?
That's the challenge we have to face. And that's the reason why this is such an irritating issue. They're a huge trading partner for us. We ought to be able to get along. We ought to be able to find a path forward. And yet we find ourselves being challenged militarily. Look, air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace, they're coming after us in cyberspace. They're coming after us in space right now. They are growing their military. And they're doing it based upon an economy which is growing as well. But a lot of what they're taking, and they're taking from us, is through theft.
Unbelievable. And they're doing it by being embedded in America, whether it's 150,000 Chinese nationals coming into the country, exploiting the student visa process, the surveillance. Nobody does surveillance better than the Chinese.
I think, Marco, Senator Rubio, or Secretary Rubio now, is absolutely correct when he says that we've got to get a handle on the number of student visas that are going to members of the Chinese Communist Party or those that are affiliated with them. It doesn't mean that we don't want to do business with them, and it doesn't mean that we have to find a path forward. But at some stage of the game, the theft has got to stop.
I'll tell you, President Trump took this on in a real way. Yes. And we haven't seen a president take this on in a real way. You've taken it on. Your colleagues have taken it on. But President Trump has certainly done it, unlike the last administration.
I totally agree. He's brought a focus to it. And look, China, we need to resolve this, and particularly when it comes to trading issues and so forth. President is correct when he says I'm going to put tariffs on until we get a good, fair trade deal. We want free trade. We want fair trade. But it starts with putting the hammer down.
Real quick on this trade headline, because the Federal Appeals Court has reinstated President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs one day after the Court of International Trade ruled that he overstepped his executive authority, that he cannot use an emergency act to do that. In fact, the authority stands with you and your colleagues in Congress. How do you feel about that?
Well, the court was correct in that, but there are two other different laws that he may also be able to use. So he has other tools available to him. I think he'll do that.
So you think the tariffs are here to stay?
No, but they'll be here for a while. And I think we'll resolve it. And I do think the president does have the ability to impose them in certain areas.
Okay, we will leave it there. Senator, it's great to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here, Senator Mike Rounds. Great interview. Thank you, sir. Quick break.